So, like Sarah told you, I do not plan on talking today about my project. I think I've talked about it enough, so I decided to take this opportunity to research something that I find very interesting, and I hope you also find very interesting. I wanted to find the biological basis of love. So I think how two people come together, what makes them fall in love, what makes the initial attraction, is something that actually draws, most of the people here, because it's something that we experience, hopefully. I think, so I hope that you find this interesting. So the thing that I'm going to talk to you today is about how there is a very strong neurological component to what we think of as love, to what we think of as attraction, to what we think of as a reward that comes with it. And actually, so Shakespeare might not have been so wrong to say that the mind is what gives us love. So, I'm going to tell you already, spoiler alert, it's chemistry. It's okay, it's happening in your brains. Doesn't mean it's not love. And then in 1953, a postdoc at McGill, actually, Chris, where are you? I lost. Yeah, no. Yeah, there were postdocs in 1953.
That's Chris, but not the postdoc.
No, because he's from McGill. You gotta keep up, man. Okay. No, because apparently you don't pay attention if I don't get blinded by these things. So in 1953, actually in the 50s and the 60s, there was the new revolution that you could stick things into rats' brains and pass electricity through them and then make them do stuff, right? So what this postdoc decided to do, his name was James Olson, he decided to stick electrodes into whatever pieces in the brain, here, stick them there, whatever, and just give the rat a jolt and see what it does. So some rats showed some aversive behavior after he gave them the jolt. They got scared. Some didn't do absolutely anything. Some showed pain reactions. And then one remarkable rat was given a jolt as he was, the rat is walking. And then suddenly the rat stops after he gets the jolt, looks up at the researcher, and goes like, "Oh man, do it again." So what this researcher stumbled upon is our reward system. He saw actually later with further experiments that if he prodded the same area after the rats had been starved for 24 hours, the rats would still stay where they had been given the jolt, even if there was food right over there. Like, no man, I don't want to, just bring it on. Just keep on giving me what you're giving me, because this is something much more pleasurable. The rats would actually ignore also the innate aversion. They would go into the light. They would do things that they don't normally do because they kept getting this push. So what this looks like in our brains is this part here. So actually the electrode went somewhere here, so not in a human brain, of course, but we have similar brains. So this is called the ventral tegmental area, and it's where we actually process rewards. You can see that it's connected to other areas in the brain, including the prefrontal cortex, the nucleus accumbens, and the amygdala. So it's basically, this is where processing the reward happens, and this is where we think, man, this is good. This is something that I want to happen, that I want to do again. This is something I want to happen to me again. And this positive reinforcement is very important so that we fulfill our basic needs, including reproduction. So if I zoom in to the ventral tegmental area, you will see now this is hardcore science. This is as hardcore as my talk's going to get. So you see that there are different types of cells in this ventral tegmental area, and this is where the stimulation happens. You see that there are some cells, these are called GABAergic neurons, these are inhibitory. These are dopaminergic neurons that are connected to a lot of sites in the brain, so that this is very simple. There are a lot of connections here. And then what happens is basically, this area is all the time sensing, am I okay? Am I doing okay? Is this good? Is this good? Via our endorphins. So once the endorphins, once you get enough endorphins, actually these neurons that are here are usually inhibiting the release of dopamine from these guys. So this inhibits this, nothing happens. Once you get enough endorphins, the inhibition is lifted. So this green guy here can give you a surge of dopamine. And that's what makes us happy. This surge is what makes us think this is good, keep this happening. It starts with endorphins, they release enough, they release the inhibition, and then we get positive reinforcement. And I'm positively reinforcing this idea as well, if you don't know. And so, what actually happens to us when something like this goes on. So I will talk about an experiment that was done on Susan. Susan is approximately a 21-year-old college student. She walks into a room and she is told that she is part of an experiment to assess how guys have different dating strategies, right? So she is sitting in front and she will come twice to a very controlled room where she sees a screen and she sees a man talking to her. She will talk to two different persons, two different men, both of which have twins. She will talk to one brother of each twin set one day, and then she will come back 2 weeks later to talk to the other one. And what happens here is that Susan, she talks to one guy, she talks to the other one, then she comes back 2 weeks later, and then the two guys are playing different roles though, because you realize by now that Susan is the subject of the experiment and not the guys. What's happening is that one guy sits in front of her, and I looked at this, he's sitting like this, and he's saying, if you want to date me, it's like, you gotta be ready to really feel passion. I shouldn't date me because I only like girls that really like to, I like to get it on, and I'm passionate, it's just me, it's passion. Okay. And then there's another guy that goes like, I really want a stable relationship because I'm lonely, yes, and I need someone to be there for me, and I think that's the kind of girl I want. This happened exactly the same way 2 weeks ago, but this time, when the sexy cat, this is the way the paper describes it, starts talking, Susan is like, oh really? Yeah, that's really nice. And she starts smiling more, and she starts like, maybe she'll lean in a little bit more, she will talk more to this guy, and she will be receptive. Even though the guys, they look the same because they're the twin pairs, actually it was one actor and then the other playing different parts, but Susan now is receptive. So she's responding to something that she didn't respond to 2 weeks before. What happened? Susan was ovulating. So she had a lot of estrogen dumped into her system, and that makes her think, man, maybe this guy is not as bad. Actually, what happens, I don't know, I guess most of the people are laughing have never been on their periods because it's not funny. So what happens is that there's what I'm talking about is called an ovulatory shift hypothesis. So Susan is basically the same, she's still the same person, but what happens is that our perceptions are shifted by estrogen. They're shifted by the drugs. They make us perceive things that we would not do. Estrogen also makes women a lot more relaxed. So maybe we are not, this is not so risky. No, why not? He likes passion. I like passion. I like passion. So actually, the thing is not about changing ourselves, but pushing us toward a behavior that has a meaningful adaptation, that means something in terms of our evolution. Because eventually, of course, Susan does not go home with the guy. They do not live happily ever after, but she does view him for a while as a potential mate. So when we are ovulating, when women are ovulating, this has been shown through several experiments, we like certain characteristics of men more than when we're not. We like social dominance. Am I screwing this up? Sorry. We like social dominance. We like more aggressive, masculine figures. We like more rougher, and also we like symmetrical people. So I don't know. But this is what has been shown. And you think, you guys get hijacked too. But this happens in a different way. So with women, it's very cyclical, of course, because we undergo these periods of estrogen, and then, oh my God, my period, estrogen, and so on. But men have to be ready all the time. You never know when a girl is going to come along and be actually ready to get her going. So you have to be prepared. So basically, men are much more strongly prompted by cues in their environment than women. So, if I'm not in the mood, I'm not going to be in the mood, but a man will like, oh yeah, sure. So, there was a very interesting experiment, and this is the only top of a paper that I will put, because this I thought was hilarious. So basically, when a man goes to a strip club, he'll think, I'm the man, because all of the ladies there are trying to make him think that I'm the man. The ladies there, of course, they want to seduce, and they want to think, 150 euros for a lap dance, not so bad. And also a bottle of vodka, and how about some cigars, and get all of this. So basically, what they tested was how much do men spend depending on whether the dancers are on their ovulating period or not. And oh surprise, it turns out that when you're ovulating, men actually give more money to you. I'm just saying. It has also been seen actually that when you are in a stable relationship, men feel more protective of their partner when the woman is ovulating, because they get these odors. And all of this is unconscious. I mean, I actually wanted a show of hands for all of the women who are not trying to get pregnant. Well, I will not see anything, but you have to raise your hands. Who are not trying to get pregnant, but know exactly the day when they are ovulating. Who knows it? You know? Okay, one person. Very good. So what I'm trying to say is, most of us don't realize this is happening. Most men also do not realize this is happening. They're thinking, oh my God, I'm flooded with testosterone, and that's what's making me think this lap dance is worth whatever I'm paying for it, right? So once our brains are hijacked in this way, what is happening? So with the females, what is happening is actually in the brain, in the reward system, we are detecting cues initially, the physical change. Am I doing something wrong? Okay. So what happens is that there are physical changes going on somewhere around here. This is awkward, okay. Somewhere around our ovaries that are producing a little bit more of the estrogen. And the ventral tegmental area, what I told you about, it basically acts as an amplifying sign. They're like, oh my God, it's starting now, produce more receptors, be more sensitive to this, and it gets the reward system going. So something that starts in the ovaries goes into the brain and changes the way we act, because we become more sensitized to cues. But of course, this is not the only part of our brains that is functional at the time. So here you see, the limbic system contains all of the reward system, and also it's a more I would say the older part of our brains, whereas we are super proud, or we have a super prefrontal cortex that makes us be, we're so rational, right? It's like super rational. So I would say this, I think here and I feel here, most of the time. Because what happens sometimes is that if we actually think that this arousal is going somewhere, it's like, okay, this is happening, yeah, and then eventually, most of the time, I think here. So the prefrontal cortex, and that's not, okay, here, most of the time. Yeah, so what's happening here is that the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex are trying to, there's an interplay between them. Eventually, when the arousal actually goes somewhere, and sex and intercourse might actually happen, the limbic system will override the prefrontal cortex. It also happens if you drink copious amounts of alcohol, I have to say. And then you actually have enough dopamine in your brain to make you think, whatever, man, let's just do it. And then if actually orgasm is reached, I went fast, right? If orgasm is reached, you will get a surge, women will get a surge of oxytocin, men will get a surge of vasopressin. I will talk about how that affects ourselves later. And we will get a rush of serotonin, and opioids are released. So basically serotonin makes you calm. So you're like, and then, okay, sorry. Yes. So, later, your brain reboots. So that's why sometimes you're like, okay, it happened, and you're laughing. Oh my God, we're in the kitchen, and everybody's like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's fine, yeah, that just happened, fine, okay. And with this brain reboot, something else happens. So sex might help you learn. And what I mean by this is, okay, what if, you really wanted this girl, you were really attracted to her, and the time it finally happened for you, you were wearing Spider-Man socks. And the next time you want to think, oh, I really want to get lucky, you're going to wear the Spider-Man socks. Because your reward system created a link between something that happened, something of the environment, something that you were wearing, something maybe even the person. It creates a link between those two things. So now they are linked in your brain. And that's also why sometimes people have fetishes. Because they associate odd things like Spider-Man socks with sex. actually, important point, it's not with sex. We don't want sex, we want the reward that comes with it. That's the important part. We want the dopamine surge. So this is important because we have a reward-based learning. And what we also learn to reward ourselves with is, for example, you have sex with Bob, and Bob may not be the most attractive person, but after sex, you cuddled, it was super nice, super good pillow talk, and you will remember this, okay, now I'm a girl, yeah. Then you will think, Bob is good. I want to try again with Bob. Evolutionary, even something someone like Brian might be even better suited. He might have those genetic traits that you thought, and when you were high on estrogen, that you might want more. But you already have Bob, and Bob was good. So what happens is you've created a link between pleasure and Bob, and you're developing a Bob fetish. You're falling in love with Bob, and this is exactly what happens. So if you stick people into a functional MRI, and you show them pictures of George Clooney, you show them pictures of Angelina Jolie, Scarlett Johansson, I had to say something for the guys, they will respond a little bit with their VTA, ventral tegmental area. This is the pleasure center I talked to you about before. If you show them a picture, if you interview people if you put people in the FMRI that are actually in love, and you show them a picture of the partner, of the person they love, the activation is much higher. So, here, and this is higher. And this is something that researchers have seen occurs maybe when people are in this intense romantic love, this addictive sort of phase, this phase that relates also to the way we are addicted to drugs, in which it causes hyperactivity, it causes sleeplessness, it causes, I don't want to eat, I just want to see this person. It's not the sex itself, it's actually the idea of being in a close environment with this person that drives you eventually, because you've been rewarded through it so much. And one important thing that I want to stress is that romantic love, this phase of attraction, very deep, where you actually light up your VTA for that special someone, that's already you falling in love. And it's not sexual arousal. When people are sexually aroused, different areas in the brain will light up and they will not create this link. So we actually exchange sexual arousal for something much deeper, much more engaging. So how do we generate from this attachment? You're in intense romantic love. Some of us know that sometimes doesn't last. But the thing is, how do you go from this initial to attachment? And I want to introduce you to, this is the happy prairie vole family. These animals are extremely useful to study how attachment happens, because unlike most mammals, they develop a monogamous attachment right after they hit puberty, because of oxytocin in females and vasopressin in males. So basically, after they have sex with one partner, they will stick with that partner for the rest of their lives. They will have several litters, and they will stick forever. They will raise them together. They will be together all the time, and they will prefer that partner to any other partners. And so, yeah, it's cute. So researchers saw that you actually, if you, this attachment happens after sexual intercourse. So they were wondering what is happening in these rats' brains after they have sex, that they want to stick to each other. And they found these two, of course, a long experimentation period, they found these two. And if they actually gave males, for example, here's just basically, if they gave males vasopressin before they had sex, they would fall in love with the woman, and they would want to go with the female. Even if they hadn't had sex. And the same thing would happen with the female with oxytocin. And actually, if you blocked the activity of these hormones in the rat's brains, they would not fall in love, even though the other person had intercourse with them, and the other person, the other animal, and they had developed an attachment to them. So actually, the hormones released during sexual intercourse were what's causing the bond. It's what's getting them attached. And so then we have things like this. How do we get to love like a prairie vole? Something that is very interesting also is that there is another another species of voles, the meadow voles, that just don't stick to one another. They're not monogamous at all. So I will come back to this because, well, I'll say it now. Because what happens is, even though both the one that does not create the attachment, the one that does create the attachment, have exactly the same surge of these two hormones, one of them is sensitive to them. One of them, the one that stays monogamous, has receptors in the right areas of the brain to catch this thing and tell, monogamy, I'm gonna hold on to this. Whereas the other one just ignores it. If you express the receptors, for example, for vasopressin in a male that is normally not monogamous, if you express them in the right areas of the brain, he will become monogamous after sexual intercourse because the same surge happens. So now I want to go back to what happens to us. So we've of course also been looking at how this affects men and women. And I was telling you about how it hijacks our behavior, but we also have this surge of oxytocin and vasopressin. Oxytocin has also been widely publicized because it's what creates the attachment between mothers and babies. So there are some people who think actually that men have hijacked our system for loving babies so that we will take care of them as well. It might be the way it evolved. It doesn't mean that I'm not pro-woman or pro-feminist. But the thing is also, so people have started looking at how our genes, since you can stick a gene in a rat's brain, and make it monogamous, so a lot of possibilities arise. So it has been seen that especially this gene, it's a receptor for vasopressin. Men have different alleles for these genes. And especially in certain regions that were actually not part of the coding sequence, so not part of what gives you the gene, there were different alleles. They'll find different alleles. And when they look at how these men behave, some of them with a particular allele, if you look at here, how they bond with their partners, how many crises they've had in their marriage, whether they live with a partner, whether they're married or whether they just cohabitate, you will see that men that have a certain form of an allele that here changes in RS, in this RS3 region, this is the gene, you've seen too many of them now, so I won't repeat that. The men that have more trouble finding a stable partner, they have more marital crisis, they have more trouble attaching basically to someone because the receptors are not as functional as what other people have. So what a wild type would be, a normal situation would be. So basically this is telling you, yes, I have within myself the capability to behave in a certain way, and it is given by my genes. But it is a mixture of both genes and environment. Oh, yeah, that's where you see that they have marital crisis. So I also want to, I don't know how long I've been talking, but I'm almost done. I wanted to add a note on how these experiments are interpreted. Many of these experiments have been done on animals, mainly because we cannot stick electrodes into people's brains, although there are some notable examples I can talk to you about. But the thing is, you always have to consider that what we are studying is neurochemistry, and that is actually incredibly similar with mammals. Even if they don't behave the same, we are still slaves to the same neurotransmitters. And of course, from them we have learned a lot, but we also need to learn a lot about how our own behavior is affected by this. And some of the studies, of course, I told you are a bit controversial, but still it gives us a clue on how we might be controlled by our own, by the chemistry going on in our brains. But so I just wanted to end on this, and I wanted to say that, I chose this topic also because I thought, yeah, it's sort of corny, of course. A girl has to do it because nobody will. But also, it's the 14th of February, so it's Valentine's Day soon. I know people in Germany don't seem to care about that as much, but it is. And I was thinking, okay, so if I've gone through all this, I've seen this, and so what could I actually tell someone? So, if I have to be perfectly honest, maybe, I know it's chemistry that induces my brain to think of a certain way. I'm creating attachments to certain rewards. And so maybe I would just say, baby, you make my dopamine surge. It's how I get attached to you. It's how I get close to you. It's what incites me to come near you. So this is the Valentine's card I would get. And also, the fact I said in the beginning, it's not magic, it's chemistry. But even though it's chemistry, it doesn't mean it's not love, and it doesn't mean we don't experience it as if it is love. And it doesn't diminish its value. Thank you very much for listening.
All right, how many people in this room love Paola? Now, how many people in this room have questions? Sorry, I'm lagging to see because it's blinding.
So you said if hypothetically Bob was good and performed well, that this would contribute to you liking him more or connecting him with good feelings the next day, right?
The thing is that, it's not the next day, it's over a certain period of time. I will talk about one experiment more.
Okay.
So they doused female rats with an artificial smell, it's called cadaverine, so it smells like cadavers. Once the male rats, you put a female rat that stinks like a decomposing corpse in front of a male, first he will be like, oh my god, this person is rotting, this rat is rotting, but then he will get used to it. Eventually, they will also mate. And then if you give this, I mean, there's not much to do if you're a rat and you're stuck in a cage. I think some sympathy is in order. If this same male is exposed to a lemon-scented female, that's very nice for rats, or a normal-scented one in estrus, in heat, he will mate with the one that smells like a cadaver, because he's created this association of pleasure, because he knows that is what will get him to the reward. So this is the most basic thing that I was trying to say.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, my question is done. I think that.
You want to know if Bob is good?
No, that's not the question. No, that's not it. No, I was wondering if Bob was unsatisfactory, if that would significantly prevent you from ever trying that.
No, so of course this is just it creates attachment. You're asking, say it again because I want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
So is there a negative feedback where there is also positive feedback, or is it only just positive feedback?
So in this rewards, the picture I painted is extremely simple.
Yeah.
But of course there are a lot of other circuits involved, and the thing I mentioned about the interplay between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system is actually pretty intense. So we do have the possibility of being rational. We do rationalize things, we do think about them, but sometimes our limbic system overrides it. And of course there are other systems involved. So for example, when I told you that estrogen diminishes the female's fear or the female's sense of risk, this also has to do with us suppressing that system, the amygdala itself. So suppressing the idea that something bad is going to happen so that we can be relaxed enough to engage in sexual intercourse.
So where is there your role for free will?
Ha! I was wondering if somebody was going to ask her about free will. So, even scientists who study this are not particularly sure. Of course, if you diminish everything, every single thing that we think, every single thing that happens to us can be narrowed down to a buzz that is being transmitted in our brains. But I do think that the buzzes amount to choices. So we do make choices. We are pushed into certain directions by our brain, and there is no question that when we have a reward, when we experience this, the hormones will flush our system and they will prompt us to do certain things, but we can still rationalize. It's a matter of debate, of course, how much free will we have and how much we are puppets of our dopamine system. But I think, and from what I learned, we still are rational beings. We're still animals. I cannot see whether that is happy, satisfied, question face, cool.
Any other questions?
That was a great talk, thank you. I think we're all familiar with at least two forms of love. The romantic love we feel for potential sexual partners, and if we're lucky, sometimes even real sexual partners. And parental love that we feel for our parents, our children. Do you think there's anything in common in the mechanisms between those two forms of love?
Oh.
And if yes, is it the basis for Oedipus complex?
So, I mean, actually, the surge of oxytocin is thought to have arisen as a way for a mother to bond to its child. So the way babies also, for example, stimulate breast when they are being breastfed is also a strong way to have oxytocin flow into the mother's brain. Oxytocin starts flowing through the mother's brain when the baby exits through the cervix, because that is also a very strong stimulation. So it's actually, it's not different, it's the same thing. We are still stimulating our attachment to the way the attachment to a baby is created the same way we create attachment through a partner. It doesn't mean so whether it's a Oedipus complex. I cannot comment on that, because you know the funny thing is they also stuck women in an MRI. They stick everything in MRI. So whatever, they'll show you whatever just to see what happens in your brain. And they showed them pictures of their partner and of their baby and of their happy baby. And there was a response in more or less the same areas to both stimuli. So it's attachment that you create.